My trip to Disneyland. One of my favorite and earliest memories as a child was my week-long trip to Orlando, Florida. We did multiple activities there, however my favorite day was when we went to Disneyland. I can remember many aspects of this trip, including the fireworks show at night, eating breakfast at the castle, and leaving early from the Tower of Terror because younger me could not handle the scary decorations inside. My adolescent self was in awe as I walked past my favorite characters around the park. In fact, I still have my autograph book with the names of all my childhood heroes inside. Buzz Lightyear, Goofy, Aladdin, you name them, I had their autograph. There were many highlights in my trip to Disneyland, however one memory stands alone as one I will remember for the rest of my life, the time I got stuck on the Rock and Roller Coaster. I was barely tall enough to go on the ride, and even at this time I was extremely tall for my age. I went on the ride before with no hiccups and absolutely loved it. I thought it was by far the best ride at the park. Throughout the rest of the day, I begged and I begged for my parents to let me go and do it again, but we had a very busy day planned and there were many things we had on our agenda. Finally, as it is getting dark and the park was about to close, my parents gave in and allowed me to go one last time. The only thing was that I would be going with my dad's friend from work and not my parents. The trip was scheduled around my father's business trip, and he had a banquet he had to go to very soon. They promised they would wait for me, but they would not go on the ride again. I had never met this man before, so I was a little hesitant to go on it with him in the first place. As a young kid, I felt weird spending an extended amount of time with someone I barely knew, even if that person was trusted by both of my parents. Unsure, I eventually gave in due to my outrageous desire to ride the rock and roller coaster one last time. The man was younger than my father by a significant amount. We waited in the line for nearly 45 minutes as my parents patiently waited out by the entrance. He and I made small talk for a little before the wait eventually turned into silence. Although I have already ridden this ride before, I was still nervous entering the final room to board the attraction. The roller coaster zips away at 50 miles per hour. A loud robotic noise as well as screams of fear and excitement fill the room as the ride shoots down the starting strip. All the passengers' heads fly back as they travel into the dark tunnel ahead. The wait felt like a lifetime, but eventually it was our turn. We boarded the car in the middle of the pack and patiently waited until we saw the spotlight turn green. As it changes colors, it lets out a loud beep. Each beep, my stomach dropped further and further. Finally, the light turned green and the ride zips away, pinning my head to my seat. At that moment, all of my fears are blown away with excitement. We zip down the dark tunnel into the room where loud rock music is blaring over the speakers, and we twist and turn throughout the metal tracks. At one point, the track ends, and you pause nearly upside down before you are sent backwards down the path you came. However, something went wrong. We came up to this point and paused. I knew this was part of the plan, so I wasn't worried at first, but after about 5 seconds I knew something wasn't right. A rush of anxiety filled my body, and I began to look around. Everyone else seemed to be nervous as well. It became clear that I was stuck on the rock and roller coaster. The lights turn on and workers begin rushing in, walking up and down the coaster as we stay seated, stuck facing the ceiling, vertically in the carts. The man I was with, I do not even remember his name at this point, tried to calm me down, but it was no use. After about 20 minutes, I began to cry. I wanted to see my family and get off the ride. The worst of it all was the fact that we were suspended in the air with nothing to look at but the ceiling. When I would turn around and look towards the ground, it only made me more scared. I decided to just put my head on my seat and close my eyes as tears rolled down my face. Going on the ride was a big step for me in my battle with anxiety. As a child, I would visit a therapist every week due to the fact that I couldn't be away from my mom for long periods of time. My entire life, I had an extremely strong relationship with my mother, and she is one of the biggest influences in my life. When I was younger, I would not be able to spend night out with friends or even go to school due to my fear of my mom dying in a car crash. I understand now that this fear is out of my control, and if God forbid something happens to my mom, like passing away in a car crash, there is nothing I could have done to prevent it happening. At the time, I have not yet come to this realization, and looking back, one of my biggest regrets is missing out on childhood events because of my separation anxiety. Nevertheless, me leaving my parents in a foreign area and heading into a stressful environment with a stranger was uncharacteristic of my childhood self.